Hi everyone, this is the lesson video for Math Lesson 34. So as always, on the first slide, you guys have this extra video to watch if you need extra help. If you move on to slide 2, you will notice that I added this little anchor chart in here for you, explaining what the associative property is. So the associative property applies to both multiplication and addition. It basically just states that the grouping of numbers does not change the answer in an addition problem or a multiplication problem. So let's look at these two examples over here. The top one in red shows a times b in parentheses and then times c, and that is the same thing as if we were to put the parentheses around b and c. So they give us a number or an example with actual numbers right down below it. They say that if you put the parentheses around 2 times 4, do that first, then then times 3. It's the same thing as if you were to do 4 times 3 first, then multiply by 2. So basically with multiplication and addition, the associative property just says it doesn't matter what order you do it in, you're going to get the same answer. So if we move on to slide 3, we're going to see that the directions are telling us to use the associative property to rewrite each expression, then complete the number sentences. So basically this is just saying you're going to have to figure out how to break apart each of these equations. And remember, the associative property just refers to changing the position of the parentheses and the fact that it does not actually change our answer. So let's look at part A first. So part A is 30 times 24. Now, if we don't break apart those numbers, it might seem like a pretty big equation and one that might be too difficult for us to figure it out. So they set this up for us. They're going to have us first break apart something times 10. And if we're not sure what number they're referring to, like let's say we don't know if they're referring to the 30 or the 24, well, we can just finish looking at the rest of our equation and we see that the 24 is right here. So we can then know, oh, okay, they're breaking apart the 30 first. So we have to break apart 30 into something times 10 is equal to 30. Well, if you're stuck, you can just skip count by tens until you get to 30 and that will give you your answer. So 10, 20, 30. I skip counted 3 times. So that tells me that right in there, I should put a 3. I forgot I am not on the student side, so I have to write everything in with the pen tool. But remember, if you have a green answer box, that means that you need to make sure that you type in your answer. So now if we look down here, we can see that they changed the position of the parentheses. First, the parentheses were around 3 times 10, and now they changed the parentheses to 10 times 24. So basically, we just have to fill in that exact same number that we wrote. That's the only thing that changed in this expression, is that they moved the parentheses, but we still get the same number. And now it's supposed to be easier to solve in our head. So now we can do 10 times 24 first. The parentheses are around that expression, and remember, parentheses mean, hey, do this part first. So I have 10 times 24, and I know that I can just ignore that 0 for a second, do 1 times 24. Well, that's equal to 24. But I can't ignore that 0 forever, so I'm going to cross out that line and add my 0 to the end there, so 240. Now I can't forget about this 3 over here though, so now they're thinking that it's easier for me to do 240 times 3. This way I'm not doing double digit by double digit just yet. I am still just focusing on multiplying something by 1 digit. So now I can do 240 times 3. So I can start off by doing 3 times 0. That equals 0. 3 times 4, that equals 12. So I'm going to write the 2. And I'm going to carry the 1. And then 3 times 2 is 6, plus that 1 that I carried over is 7. So now I have my answer of 720. Remember, you guys absolutely do need to type your answers in the green boxes. I am not doing that because I am not in the student version of Classkick, so it will not let me type in my answers. Okay, so we're going to move on to part B. So part B is going to be the same thing. We're going to take that equation at the top and we're going to break down some of the numbers. So they already broke down 40 for us. They broke it down into 4 times 10. So we do not need to break down 43. So we're just going to bring 43, that second number in our equation, and rewrite it over here. So they started out with the parentheses around 4 times 10, and now they moved the parentheses. So now 4 is on its own, and then they did 10 times, and again, we're just going to bring that 43 down because we haven't changed it yet. So again, the thinking here is that it is easier to do 10 times 43. So remember, I can just cross off the 0, ignore it for a second, do 1 times 43. Well, that's equal to 43. But I can't forget about that 0 completely, so I'm going to rewrite it, 430. So now, again, I can do this times 4, and it's a little bit easier because, again, I'm not at double digit by double digit. I'm still multiplying only by 1 single digit down here. So this is getting us set up for when we are going to be doing double digit times double digit. So now I just go ahead and multiply. So now I know 4 times 0 is 0. 4 times 3 is 12, so I write the 2 and I carry the 1. 4 times 4 is 16, plus that 1 that I carried over is 17. So I'm left with an answer of 1,720. So again, make sure that you guys are typing your answers into the answer boxes because I will not accept your answers if they are not typed. Okay, we're going to go ahead and keep going. We have one more problem on slide 3. So again, we are using the associative property, and we are doing that by breaking down some of these numbers and changing the parentheses. So now they give us 2 blanks right here. Well, they helped set this up in the first 2 problems, so I know that in these parentheses, that's where they break down that first number, because that's what they've done for the first 2 problems. So I know that they're breaking down 30 into 3 times something. So I could skip count by 3s until I get to 30, or I can know in my head, okay, well, 3 times 10 is equal to 30, so I'm going to write the 10 right there. And then again, I'm going to take that second number and I'm going to put it in that last box because they have set this up for us, so I know the pattern that they're going for. So first number first gets broken down, and then the second number just gets written in the second number space. So in this top line, they put the parentheses around the 3 and the 10, and in this next line, they move the parentheses. They leave the 3 on its own, and they put the parentheses around the other 2 numbers. So that is 10, which they dropped down right there, and 37, which is brought down right here. So now I can do 37 times 10. So remember, I can cross off that 0 in the 10, forget about it for just a second, and know that 1 times 37 is 37, but I can't forget about that 0. I have to add that 0 back to the end of my answer. So I did 10 times 37 first, which is good because it's in the parentheses, and you always do what's in the parentheses first. Now I can multiply by that 3. So I have 3 times 0. I know that that equals 0. I have 3 times 7. I know that that equals 21. So I'm going to write the 1, carry the 2. And then I have 3 times 3, which I know is 9, plus 2, which I know is 11. So I end up with an answer of 1,110. So again, guys, this is setting you up to be able to do double digit by double digit multiplication. That's why we're focusing on the associative property, because it's a little bit easier to start by breaking apart these numbers. and finding slightly easier ways for some people to solve them. But this again is kind of a stepping stone into when we actually do the double digit by double digit multiplication. So now we're moving on to slide 4. Number 2 is telling us to use the associative property in place value disks to solve. Well, we're not going to use place value disks. We are just going to do the associative property. So again, they start us out with the equation. Now I left this completely blank for you guys to type in. If it is easier for you to use the pen tool to write all this out, that's okay. But it needs to be legible, meaning it needs to be neat enough for me to read it. Okay, so we're going to have to start by breaking apart these numbers. So I'm just going to follow the pattern that they've already done, that they did on slide 3. So that pattern is they take that first number and break it apart. And they usually break it apart into something times 10. So I have to think, what times 10 equals 20? Well, I know that 2 times 10 is equal to 20. And I'm going to start out with my parentheses around 2 times 10 first, just because, again, I am following the pattern that they have set up for us. And then I have that last number, that 27. But now is when they change the parentheses, they change which numbers I'm going to multiply first. So the 2 is left by itself, and then we put the parentheses around the next 2 numbers, because again, we want to do these 2 numbers first and then multiply by the single digit. So I'm putting the parentheses now around 10 times 27. So again, I'm going to show my work over to the side here. So I have to do 10 times 27 first. Well, I can ignore that 0 for just a second and do 1 times 27. I know that that is equal to 27, but I cannot forget about that 0, so I'm going to write it there at the end. Did not mean to erase my 0 there. Okay, now that I did the numbers in the parentheses first, I can now multiply times 2. So again, I end up with a triple digit number multiplying it by a single digit number. So I'm going to start out multiplying 2 times 0. I know that that equals 0. And then I have 2 times 7. Well, I know that that equals 14, so I'm going to write the 4, and I'm going to carry the 1. And now I have 2 times 2. That equals 4, plus 1 is equal to 5. So I end up with an answer of 540. Now, these problems are a little bit weird because you do have this big answer box. It is telling you to use the associative property. So I do need to see the associative property. I do need to see you breaking it down, and I do need to see your answer. So what is highlighted is what I need to see, either written with the pen tool or typed into the answer box. I need to see you breaking that number down, and I need to see the parentheses being moved, and I need to see the final answer. Showing your work for this part is optional, because again, I'm asking you guys to show a lot of stuff that can be pretty tricky to do on the computer. So showing your answers right here, what I just circled, showing your work right there, this is going to be optional just because I'm already asking you guys to show a lot. So you have to make sure, in order for me to mark this answer as correct, you have to make sure that you're showing everything that I highlighted. So let's move on to part B. So part B, again, they give us the equation up here, and I'm going to follow the pattern that they've done for us so far. So the pattern that they've done for us so far is that they break that first number down into 10 times something, and that's always in parentheses. So I have to think, what times 10 equals 40? Well, I know that 4 times 10 equals 40, so that's what I'm going to go ahead and write in my parentheses, and then I just bring that second number down. And now, again, I'm just following the pattern that they had us do on the other slide of moving the parentheses. So now the 4 is going to be on its own, and we're going to put the parentheses around 10 times 31, because again, it's telling us to multiply those 2 numbers first. So again, I'm going to show my work over here. And I have to start off by doing 10 times 31. So again, I can ignore that 0 and think to myself, well, 1 times 31 is equal to 31, but I cannot completely forget about that 0, so I'm going to rewrite it right there. Now that I did 10 times 31 first, I can multiply it all by 4. So now I have a triple digit number by a single digit number, and I can go ahead and start my multiplication. So I have 0 times 4, which is equal to 0. I have 4 times 1, which is equal to 5. And I have 4 times 3, which is equal to 12. So then I end up with my answer of, I did that wrong. Sorry, guys. Let me redo that. 4 times 0 is 0. 4 times 1 is 4, not 5. And 3 times 4 is 12. That looks much better. So now I end up with an answer of 1,240. So again, when you guys are doing this on your side, I have to see the associative property. I have to see you breaking down those numbers, moving the parentheses, and your final answer. Again, I am leaving the showing your work part here that I circled. That is optional. Okay, number 3, we're going to continue using the associative property, again, without place value discs. So we're just going to keep on doing the same exact thing. So I'm going to start off with 40 times 34. Again, I am following the pattern that we have been doing, the pattern where they start with that first number and they break it down into 10 times something. So I have to figure out 10 times what equals 40. Well, I know 4 times 10 is equal to 40. And then I just have to make sure that I include that last number. So again, I'm just going to continue with the process, continue with the pattern that they have done for us. And that means that I'm going to change the parentheses. So instead of them being around 4 times 10, the 4 is now going to be on the outside. It'll be 4 times 10 times 34 in the parentheses. So now I just have to solve my equation. So again, I'm going to start with the parentheses because that is part of the order of operations. So I can ignore that 0 for just a second and do 34 times 1, and I know that that equals 34. But I cannot forget about that 0 completely. I have to add it back in. Now that I did 10 times 34, I can now multiply that times 4. And now I'm just going to go ahead and multiply. So 4 times 0 is 0. 4 times 4 is 16, so I'm going to write the 6, carry the 1. 4 times 3 is 12, plus that 1 that I carried over is 13. So I end up with an answer of 1,360. Again, you have to make sure that you show the associative property, which means you are showing me how you're breaking down that first number and how you are moving the parentheses and your final answer. We are going to keep going. So we are on part B. So again, I am following the pattern that they have set up for us. So that means that I am looking at my equation up here. I have 50 times 43, and I need to start with that first number and break it down into 10 times something. So I need to think to myself, okay, what times 10 equals 50? Well, I know that 5 times 10 is equal to 50. So I'm going to write that out and put that in parentheses and bring down that second number. I'm not messing with that second number. So now I know that I need to move those parentheses. So instead of 5 being grouped together with the 10, the 5, it's going to be on its own, and it's going to be now 5 times 10 times 43, and those two numbers are going to be in the parentheses. So now that I regrouped, or changed my parentheses, I can go ahead and start with the multiplication. So I have 10 times 43. Again, I can ignore that 0 for just a second and do 1 times 43. I know that that is equal to 43, but I cannot forget about that 0. I'm going to add it to the end. So I did 10 times 43, and now I can multiply it by 5. So now I'm just going to finish setting up my equation and just go ahead and multiply. So I have 5 times 0, that is equal to 0. I have 5 times 3, that is equal to 15, so I'm going to write the 5, not a very good 5, there we go, and carry the 1, and then I have 5 times 4, which is equal to 20, plus that 1 that I carried over gives me an answer of 2,150. So again, I'm just going to make sure that I rewrite it like this. And once again, you guys need to show me the associative property by breaking down that first number and moving the parentheses and solving the equation. Okay, so for our last problem on the problem set, this is going to be reminding you about the distributive property. And now if you scroll down here, you can see that I added another little anchor chart for you, reminding you what the distributive property is, because we talked about this before break. So the distributive property says a multiplication fact can be broken apart into the sum of two other multiplication facts. So basically, if you look down here at this example, they start out with 5 times 4, and they break down the 5 into 2 and 3. But it's still times 4, so that times 4 kind of gets distributed to the other multiplication facts. So again, it's breaking down those numbers and just trying to find an easier way to help you guys with multiplication. So let's do the 4a and 4b together. So we're going to start off with 4a. So we are at 40 times 34. So this time we're going to keep that first number the same. We're not going to break apart 40, because 40, since it ends in 0, it's pretty easy to multiply even though it's a big number. Instead, we're going to break apart 34, and we're going to break it apart into easier numbers to deal with. So I'm going to break it apart first into 30, and again, I'm trying to go with easy numbers. So I'm breaking 34 into 30 and 4. Because those are two easier numbers to deal with. So now remember, if you look back at this anchor chart, it says sum of, and there is an addition sign in between the two equations that it got broken down into. So you break it down, and then you have to add them back together. So again, we're not changing the 40, we're keeping the 40. So the 40 gets multiplied with the two numbers that we broke 34 down into. So I broke 34 into 30. And now I need to do 4 as well. So again, this the whole point of doing the distributive property and associative property is to try and make it a little bit easier for you guys to multiply. So now we need to start solving this. So we're going to start by solving the equations in the parentheses, because remember, parentheses mean that you have to do that section first. So we're going to start off with 40 times 30. So again, we can ignore those zeros for just a second and do 4 times 3. Well, I know that 4 times 3 is equal to 12. But I can't completely forget about those zeros. I crossed off 2 zeros, so that means that I add 2 zeros to my answer. So it's really 1,200. And I bring down my plus sign, and now I can do 40 times 4. So again, I can ignore that 0 for a second and do 4 times 4. I know that that is equal to 16, but I can't forget about that 0. I crossed off 1 0, so I have to add 1 0 back in. So that really gives me 160. So now I have to add my two numbers together. I have 1,200 plus 160. If you can do that in your head, great. If you need to do it off to the side and add them together vertically, that's great as well. You do whatever you need to do. But just make sure that you write your answer. Either way, you should get 1,000 360. So again, you guys either type this in or write it with a pen tool, but again, it has to be legible, which means I have to be able to read it. If I cannot read your writing, then I will not accept it. So make sure that I can read it. I'm just crossing that off so I can actually make it zeros, not a zero with a line through it. And again, you guys need to show me what is highlighted. So you have to show me the breaking down of the number and it being distributed properly. And you have to show me the answers that you end up with, which should be the same answers as me, honestly. Okay, we're going to keep going. Part B. So 60 times 25. Again, I'm going to keep 60 because any number that ends in a 0 is pretty easy to continue or to multiply with. So I'm going to start my first group over here. So 60 times something, and I have to figure out how I'm going to break apart 25. I think I'm going to keep with the theme of breaking it down into tens because, again, pretty easy numbers to multiply. So I'm going to break 25 down into 20 and 5. So I have 60 times the first number that I broke it down into is 20. Close off my parentheses, and then don't forget I have to do a plus because 20 plus 5 is equal to 25. So I have to add that plus. And again, I am multiplying 60 times both numbers, so I have to write 60 times that second number that I broke it down into, 5. Close off my parentheses. Now I can go ahead and multiply those two numbers that are in the parentheses. So I have 60 times 20. So again, if need be, I can cross off those two zeros, ignore them for just a second, do 6 times 2, which 6 times 2 is 12. Write my 12. And then add in those two zeros that I crossed off, so I really get 1,200. And then I'm going to drop my plus sign down, and now I need to multiply 60 times 5. So again, I can cross off that 0, ignore it for a second, and just do 6 times 5. Well, I know that 6 times 5 is equal to 30, but I can't forget about that 0 that I imaginarily crossed off, so I'm going to add it back in. And now I get 300. So now I just have to add those two numbers together. Again, if you can add 1,200 plus 300 in your head, that's awesome. If you need to write out the equation vertically over on the side in order to solve it, that's awesome. Just do what you gotta do. Just make sure that you come up with an answer of 1,500. So again, you guys either typing it in or writing very, very carefully and as neatly as possible with your pen tool. You have to show me breaking down that number into the parentheses, doing the multiplication, and finally figuring out your answer. So you have to make sure that you show all of those parts. Okay, so for homework, you guys just have one slide, and it's just 4 problems. So for these 4 problems, and I set them up for you, you're going to have to use the associative property to solve. So first one, I set you up quite a bit. I set you up with most of the equation. It should be fairly easy to fill in the blanks. Now, the one thing that is different from the problem set is going to be this line down here, because this is the line that I would write off over to the side with a pen tool. So like right over here, I'm going to kind of help you guys out with this first one. I'm going to help you out quite a bit with this first one here. So this is the line that I would have written over here to solve the equation vertically. So I want you guys to, once you get to this point, write it out right here so I can see that you know what equation you guys actually need to solve. So again, it's not one that I did in the problem set, but again, you guys are just dropping things down pretty much and solving the problems when you need to. So again, right here, that one would drop down, and then this answer box right here would be the equation, or sorry, the answer to 10 times whatever. So again, right down here, that answer box is going to be the answer to 10 times whatever problem you are solving. Now I think I will highlight the problems for you guys just because all of these do kind of blend in together. So I just want to make sure that the problems that you guys are actually solving kind of stand out. So again, you guys just have these 4 equations that you need to solve. I will kind of clean up these arrows and leave them in for you to help you out a little bit. But feel free to watch this video however many times you need to. Feel free to watch the video on slide 1 if you need to. That guy usually goes over things a little bit differently than I do. And again, feel free to go back at any point and use those anchor charts that I put in for you. Okay, I will see you later. Good luck.